What's going on, folks? Welcome to another podcast episode of the Coffee Roasters warm-up sessions. Thank you so much for joining us once again today. We're going to be in for a ride this episode, so strap in, put your seatbelt on, and hope you enjoy this one. All right, let's pour some batch.
Do it.
Some batch, some drip, some batch. What's your go-to for that?
It's always batch.
Batch.
Yeah.
One guy I walked into a cafe and dude, is that mug gonna withstand the heat?
Yeah, dude. It's a chalice.
One time I walked into a cafe in Seattle and I was like, "Can I get some batch?" And he's like, "I knew that right away." I'm like, "Dude, this guy knows coffee for sure."
Really?
He's like, "Do you work in coffee?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." Yeah. So I don't know. I guess batch brew is like a.
Do you find in the norm like cafes say like filtered coffee?
Oh, I never hear that.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
if I hear
that.
filtered,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, dude, no, you're deep into this.
I want to ask someone who has non-filtered coffee.
Espresso?
It's filtered. It has a portafilter. It's a metal filter. Unless you're Scott Rayo and you're adding little paper filters in between. I mean,
Dude. Honestly, it smells kind of savory.
oh man, this is bad.
Oh, I don't even want to try it. Is it the brew?
Yeah, it's definitely the brew because I know this coffee and this coffee is tasty.
Oh, no. That's a bummer.
Golly.
Sure brewed a pour over of it.
Not to say it's like it's bad in the sense of like I know what it's supposed to taste like and this is not what it's supposed to taste like. But it's not awful. Does it taste bitter or sour to you?
No.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So it's not bad.
It's
It's not unpleasant.
Still scorching hot, yeah. It's a natural, huh? It's either a natural or anaerobic.
Dude, why would you say that? We went from grinding a normal batch brew at 5 on our EK to this coffee being ground at 8.5.
I think it's a natural.
Kept everything the same?
Is it a natural?
No, it's not a natural.
Whoa.
Not even close.
All right, folks, you can call me out in the comments.
Yeah.
I butchered that.
What makes you think it's a natural?
Honestly, I think there's like this oddly sweet hint of like fruitiness to it that I would that I feel like knowing how bad this brew is and to think that it still came out.
Yeah.
I'm like, because usually naturals, like, even if you brew them really poorly, you'll still get a lot of like that sweet fruitiness, which is nice. But that's what I was thinking.
It has a nice round body, I would say.
Kind of tastes like a Jolly Rancher. Oh, dude. On the back end, it still has a little bit of fermentiness.
Mark, you're pushing it too far, please.
I don't know.
Now you're simply overhyping the coffee. The coffee's not that good. Or, I need to change my vocabulary and language. Why am I automatically affiliating Jolly Ranchers as a good coffee?
It's your preference.
I know, it's my problem. It's not a preference, a problem. They both start with a P, but they're different.
Yeah,
It's not bad.
It's not bad, yeah.
Yeah.
I can jive with this.
I think I automatically judged it harshly because of what I know what it tastes like.
Yeah.
So,
What?
do you want to know what the coffee is?
Yes, I do.
Dude, you'll be shocked.
I don't want to hear it.
This is Anna Mustafa's decaf. That's a good reaction.
Oh.
Brewed very badly on my behalf.
Wow.
Interesting, eh? The silence, folks. What happens when you have a decently nice decaf?
Wow.
Big potential.
Yeah. I can taste the decaf now.
Yeah. I think the fermenty stuff that you were talking about is actually...
I'll tell you on the dry aroma, I told you.
You did. You said like a sweet pastry.
Yeah, which is very
decaf like.
Decaf-esque.
People say bready, toast. Yeah. But this was sweeter. And that's why I think...
And on the back end, it tastes kind of like a natural, which is kind of like it still has some sweetness, complexity. It's like a cherry or is it compote or
compote?
It's wow. Okay.
So, folks, for everybody, Mark had no idea what coffee I was brewing. I brought it in an unlabeled container. Mark never saw the actual beans before I ground them.
Yeah, I can vibe with this. That's dope. I'm actually pretty pumped about that. Yeah. That's cool. Well, it took us 7 minutes to talk that through because it's a first on the podcast out of 29 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking ballin'. Yeah.
That's good.
That's sick.
I mean,
I'm jabbing with that. I think the podcast is over, you guys. All right. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Thanks for listening. That was groovy.
If you're a listener who has a tattoo, Death Before Decaf, I'm sorry. Because this is a tasty cup.
First off, don't ever get that tattooed on your body. No, dude.
I think I've seen that on some kind of Instagram.
That's devastating. I'm like, just wait until there's anaerobic process decaf and then...
Yeah. Change your mind then, right? But yeah. We just earlier today I was just checking my email. One of the importers that we work with sent us an email about some of the realities of what's happening around the world right now with coffee infrastructure and the fact that coffee is this overseas foreign thing we consume makes things really complicated. And it kind of goes back to, we experienced a little bit about it, during this past year that things got real crazy in the world, where when China started to shut down their factories and it's like, so there is a problem when we only buy stuff from China. Yeah.
And when the country shuts down, we may not get anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're dealing with coffee, where we can't grow it in the States as of yet right now.
Yeah.
And that brings up a lot of complications because anything can happen overseas. Not that anything can't happen here.
Right.
And a lot of times it's stuff that we can't even control.
That's the key. Yeah.
Like natural disasters.
Yeah.
If a hurricane hits, no matter how hard you blow right back at it, it's coming.
Yeah.
And so some of the stuff that's been going on is, frost in Brazil?
Frost, yeah. 80 countries got snow. Or 80 cities, sorry.
Yeah. And it wrecked a lot of crop.
Yeah.
So what happens when one of the biggest coffee producing nations in the world gets wrecked with just this natural disaster that coffee trees just can't stand up to? It causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
We're going to see insane, like the C market went up to $1.80 at some point, or even higher than that, which is insane. That like rarely ever happens. So we're experiencing, insane weather in Colombia as well.
Yep.
Like it's extremely wet and rainy, which is causing more issues with coffee quality.
Yep.
And that's hiking up the prices as well. So there's a lot of crazy stuff happening. Yeah. And then layer that on top with, port and shipping issues. Right now there's a shortage of containers. There's a shortage of workers. There's a shortage of truck drivers. Stuff is getting postponed and, pushed back insanely. So it's wild right now.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you're saying brings things into reality that we don't have that much control over stuff. Especially, like you said, natural disasters or, just weather and climate. Like we can do our part, but that's about it. Like we can't do much. And us being in the United States, especially for coffee, we're predominantly on the bigger scale. We are the consumer in the sense of the fact that we don't grow any coffee. So we have to depend on someone else's infrastructure. We have to depend on someone else's economy, political just system.
Yeah.
We have to depend on those things in order to get this product that we enjoy.
Yeah.
And this product that also affects that now our livelihood, our friends' livelihoods,
Yeah, that's crazy.
our community's economy. Like, you know what I mean? Imagine if like there was no coffee at all, how that would affect Bellingham.
Listen, like you having a good cup of coffee in the morning is like the least of worries. Like for you to have an 87 scored natural processed Ethiopia Fruit Loops is like the last thing on the list.
Yeah.
Which we're not thinking about right now.
Yeah.
All I could think of is, man, I want a good coffee in the morning to wake up and drink and enjoy. And we take, I'm going to be honest for myself. I'm taking this a lot for granted. I'm taking, a good coffee, things working smoothly, very for granted when in reality, you brought up like political stuff. Yeah. What happens when, a civil war breaks out or political unrest breaks out and they shut down, roads to get coffee from the farm to the ship.
Yeah.
They shut down other infrastructures that we heavily rely on. The Suez Canal shuts down. There's an insane amount of like, delays and all this stuff. Like it's just wild. And having a good cup of coffee is the last thing in our, the last of importance, because there's a lot of things before that matter a lot more. And this is all on top of the fact that like right now farmers and producers are already not getting paid, as much as they probably should, like that's on top of all the other underlying issues that the coffee industry just hasn't really dealt with in the longest time ever.
Right.
And it's just one thing is piling on top of the other, on top of the other. And, what's that saying where, I don't know, but it does come to mind, Chance the Rapper when he said, a fresh coat of paint don't make the stain go away.
Right.
And it's like all this time we've been just putting on these coats in the industry, and in the world as a general.
Yeah.
And then when things get escalated poorly, that just gets layered on top and things get really complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause I think sometimes when issues come to the surface, instead of actually taking care of the issue, we tend to more or less look away and pretend like the issue isn't there. And all in the same, the issue is still making a mess. And then when we have nowhere to turn, we have to face on the issue, but then it becomes a much bigger problem.
Yep, we deal with issues until we don't deal with them until they start to actually impact us firsthand, which is
we
a bummer.
avoid them.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us who have like that privilege to avoid them, like especially for you and I in the United States, we can make some different changes and try to pivot, quote unquote. But I can't imagine farmers in Brazil right now who, how do you pivot? Like, what do you pivot to when you lost your crop? Like, what do you pivot to when your plants died? Like, and most folks know that like you can't just bring back a plant and have it produce next season.
Of course.
Like the recovery of that is going to take time.
Yeah.
So like, how do you pivot? Like, how do you create a livelihood for the next 5 years until your plants can produce again, or until you plant new plants that will produce in the future? Like, how do you pivot from that? You know what I mean? Like, there's not much privilege there where you and I, we can maybe work around it. We have that opportunity. So it's a much bigger problem than I think we can still like rationalize now, because the news is like hot right now. It's straight off the press right now.
And it gets even, I mean, now it's getting to a point where it's like our last big massive coffee order that we put in for green coffee, not only was delayed quite a bit, but shipping prices were way substantially higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
So not only are shipping prices going to go up, well, now with all this frost and all the difficulties, green coffee is going to go up even more so.
Yeah.
And of course, we're talking about like some of the best coffees in the world.
Right.
You know, so for the sake of conversation, just keep in mind, like, what we're talking about specialty coffee. Coffee scored, 80 and above, and of course, I mean, for us mostly it's 85 and above.
Yeah.
But really, it's like now those coffees are going to be priced higher because a lot of that coffee that was just destroyed by frost, all over the world, whether that's through COVID, whether all the things. But now, a lot of the, people who used to buy coffee from, these farms where there's no coffee coming from them, they have to go buy coffee from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that somewhere else may be the coffee farms that we're buying from.
Yeah.
And that creates more competition. The price is jumping up higher.
Yeah.
And it's coming down towards us. And, for a smaller roasting company, that makes it even more difficult because we don't have very much leverage to play with.
Right.
And it's getting, there's a lot of complications that we have to work around.
Yeah.
And now where, our coffee prices, you'll probably, if you're listening to this, you're probably going to notice coffee prices go up, whether that's whole bean coffee, at the cafe, maybe not as much at the grocery store, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But from your favorite roasters, probably, and it may not be like $20, $30 differences, but you're going to see a little bit of a hike. And that's for everybody because we're all trying to figure out how do we deal with this when the impact is so massive.
So big.
And there's so many intricate details that are part of this process of getting coffee from origin to freshly roasted in a bag in your kitchen. And almost every detail is getting impacted.
Yeah, because just a little shift in one link of the supply chain initially like shifts everything off. Yeah. So imagine just going 1 degree off. In the long run, that 1 degree spreads pretty wide. Of
course.
So this isn't just going to impact like the end of this year. This isn't just going to impact next year. This could potentially impact up to 5 years in the future because of how drastic the situation is. I think with all of that to say, it also puts like us in a place where we have to like reevaluate things and think about things such as like commitment. Like, are you in this for the long run? Like, what are you willing to do? How long are you willing to stick around? And think things through. And we've talked about like self-awareness, and this is another one of those moments, like a difficult situation that basically puts us in a place to have to be a little more introspective, ask the tough questions. Mm-hmm. And I think tough questions are like key to growth. You cannot like grow, progress, or change without asking tough questions that lead to making hard decisions.
Of course.
So I think a more positive spin on this situation would be like, hey, what answers are you going to find? Because you never had to ask questions that are in this vein, and this opportunity like opens up doors to ask new questions and to find answers. Does that make sense?
Of course. I mean, some clear examples of that, even, it's, I mean, whenever I tell people like, hey, we just started the coffee roasting company early 2020, and most of them are like, oh man, must have been the perfect time. It's a sarcastic joke, like, oh, sucks for you, And it does. Like, we don't even know what running a roasting company outside of the current circumstances of this world.
Yeah.
What that even looks like. Like we've never experienced that. And, you know, to a certain extent, I'm actually, you know, a part of me is really happy that we did start when we did, because
Yeah.
it's gonna teach me to think in ways that I would never have thought of before. Like it's pushed us to think outside the box. It's pushed us to adapt and figure out how to adapt quickly. It's to solve issues that we probably otherwise, I mean, we for sure otherwise wouldn't have had to think about, you know? And so, you know, whether that's with, you know, running a business, you know, throughout this past year, same thing with this situation is like, now we have to navigate, you know, whether that's higher green coffee prices, you know, maybe navigate with, you know, whether that's people, how are people going to buy coffee from us? Like, are people going to second think buying more expensive coffees, or how are cafes, our wholesale accounts are going to work around that situation as well, you know? And yeah, it's not super fun, but, yeah, at the end of the day, you're right. Like it's testing your commitment is like, how much do you actually want this for us? Like, how much do you actually want to own a roasting company and deal with these weak infrastructure issues that could literally take you out in one day?
Yeah.
Like, there could not be any coffee, just one magical day, literally at the snap of a finger. We could just end up with zero coffee at the roastery and there to be no other coffee that we could buy.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, I think we're fairly optimistic and, you know, naturally as people. One thing that I always tell myself is like, just as things could go bad, the same thing can happen on the other side.
Yeah.
Where at the snap of a finger, everything could change for the better. You could get the biggest opportunity of your life tomorrow. Like, you could get the biggest, you know, wholesale account, the biggest deal, the biggest, I don't know, or one day somebody can, you know, figure out something, you know, a different way to grow coffee where that stuff doesn't impact it at all. And the only reason why they looked into, you know, growing different kinds of coffee trees or whatever it could be is because at some point there was an issue that they had to figure out. And that just changes the entire trajectory of history.
Yeah, for sure. I've personally experienced that on a very personal level. Man, I haven't had that many jobs, but I think even thinking about my longest committed job with the nonprofit that I was with, bless you, with the nonprofit that I was with, I, spent almost 10 years with one job. Like, any job you spend that long of time, you're going to be tested with your commitment. You're going to be tested with the difficulties of like, man, wanting to give up and thinking like, man, like, is it really worth it? Like, you may even have another opportunity lined up, and making like basically having that inner dialogue and trying to make that decision and trying to figure out like what is right for you. But I stuck through all that hardship during that 10-year stretch because like I firmly believe like what I was doing in the moment at the time was the best thing, the most positive thing I could do, no matter what the challenge was. I mean, taking a even farther step back, like when I went to college and I was in nursing school, I worked 3 nursing jobs and I tried like just hard to love it. And I'll be honest, I was good at it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a matter that I wasn't skilled, that I didn't understand my job, but I tried hard to make something work that wasn't necessarily like for me.
Yeah.
So the difficulties of that job actually, in a place where I had to give up, it actually gave me an opportunity to give in to a new situation.
Yeah.
So that necessarily, like not necessarily negative perspective on giving up, because once I said no to my nursing job, I realized what I was actually truly passionate about, and that there was an opportunity for me to take that was always there. You see what I mean? So I think a lot of the times with situations that we're talking about, one in coffee, for us, it's gonna be a test.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't figured it out. Like I said, we're just processing this now. And we're going to have to basically deal with the situation as we go by asking these tough questions. Like, how committed are we to sustainability? Yeah. What does sustainability look like? What does serving high quality coffee look like when the highest quality coffee you get is like a lower 80s? You know what I mean? We'll have to tackle those questions. Yeah. So it'll literally like test us to the core. But I don't say that pessimistically. I'm actually very excited. Yeah. Like, I don't know, maybe that's weird. Like, I'm excited to be tested. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm also excited to be like refined. And I know this is going to be an opportunity for us to get better at our craft or to understand like what we really, really want to do in life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think just everything that you've been saying kind of is making me realize like a lot of these difficult situations that we're facing in life in general, whether it's as a career, in your schooling, in whether you're a business owner or maybe you just have been working the same job for the last 5 years and you absolutely hate it, whatever that could be. But, difficulties are an opportunity where you have the chance to think, because I feel like, once again, kind of going back to what we talked about was like, oftentimes we don't deal with things until they become so bad that it's like, oh, now there's no more sweeping under the rug. There's no more coat, putting another coat of paint on it. It's there and it needs to be dealt with. And oftentimes I think these difficult situations in life, they're just opportunities and chances for us to say, hey, do we need to just keep going and pushing on? Because maybe this is just a difficult moment in whatever you're doing. And that's okay. Yeah, this could pass. And there might be something so much better and brighter in the future. Or the flip side is saying, oh no, I actually need to, this just opened my eyes to think like, I need to quit. I need to quit pursuing whatever I'm pursuing, or I need to leave this job, or I need to, pursue a completely different career or relationship, whatever it is. And that's not bad either.
No.
Saying that, hey, I'm going to stop, I'm going to quit, I'm going to give up is not bad. And I don't even think giving up is the right term for it, but it's literally to say, oh no, like this isn't where I should be. I could do better, or it's more true to who I am to be doing something completely different. Yeah. And that's you growing as a human being. That's you growing in self-awareness. That's you growing in understanding who you are, what you're built for, what you're created for, how you're wired. Yeah. And a lot of that, honestly, it's just the journey, and you just have to trust the process. Yeah. And that's something that, like, I remember a couple of days ago, I don't know what we were talking about, something coffee related, where I'm like, honestly, I'm just trusting the process.
Yeah.
And I know that's super vague, but I think if you can trust the process, it's going to get you there.
Yeah. And looking at my life, like I'm 33 right now, close to hitting that, middle age. It's time is coming close for a midlife crisis. And I'm starting to realize one thing is clearer and clearer and clearer in my life. And that's the fact that we don't have all the answers. We just don't. Not only me, like in general, like no one has all the answers. And I'm starting to settle with that and be okay with the fact that like getting the answer is actually not the goal. It's not. Like I'm not looking for more answers. I'm actually enjoying life with much more questions, because having more questions is actually opening up the door to live a life of like a huge scavenger hunt. Like, every single problem opens up an opportunity for me to question and figure something out. And I may get a glimpse of an answer here, and that answer will lead to another question here. And literally, like, the more I live in that tension of like answers, questions, the more I'm trusting that process, the more like adventurous and full life starts to look like. But that also requires you to live in this constant state of, like my good mentor once said, like living in pain and pleasure, living in stereo, and being okay with like living in that tension, living in that process of taking everything and like holding it together as one, instead of like living in a very like binary thinking, like, oh man, like if we run out of coffee, like Mirror is going to die, or you know what I mean? Like if this happens, like that's it, we won't be able to handle it. But more or less be like, man, we actually might find a new solution to something we've never asked a question about.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, if Mirror dies, that'll open up time and opportunity to maybe start a whole new journey.
Yeah.
Like we don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's going to produce some kind of opportunity and maybe some kind of answer in the moment, not the final answer, is actually exciting.
Yeah.
But scary.
Yeah. The fact that, you know, yeah, I think it's like, it feels like a hump that you have to get over.
Yeah.
Where questions are not quite as scary.
Yeah.
Because it can be really scary when there's too many of them.
The unknown.
So you really have to change how you think about things for that to become a comfort where you're like, oh, that takes off the pressure of needing to have an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like,
Yeah.
And I think we just don't give ourselves enough credit as well that, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, whether you're 15, whether you're 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, whether maybe you're 60 and you're listening to this podcast, the fact that you've made it this far in life is already bonkers.
Yeah.
Literally, we live in a world where it's almost, I mean, it's not this insane, but it's every man for himself. Whether you're in high school, you know, whether you're like trying to survive lunch break with bullies in your school, or, you know, whether you're starting, you're a freshman in college, whether you started a business, whether you're realizing, oh wait, the last 30 years of my life working this corporate job was actually the worst choice you've ever made.
Yeah.
Regardless where you were, like, I don't know, maybe take this time to say like, oh no, I've actually I'm making it out alive.
Yeah.
And that's something to be stoked about, but also realizing that like you haven't had it all figured out, but you've already made it this far.
Yeah. You've already problem solved.
Yeah. And
you can do it. You can problem solve more.
And
like,
trusting the process is realizing that, oh, no matter whatever happens, we're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's great. We're going to get somewhere. And it's not to be overwhelmed with 20 years ahead, but just saying, what's the best thing that I could do right now? Mm-hmm. And if you can live life doing the absolute best to your bestest knowledge, to your bestest effort, you know, I don't even know if that's the word, but, you know, like just putting in all your effort and energy into doing the right thing today.
Yeah.
We're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're in the rut of right now.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm excited. It is scary sometimes, but I'm excited.
Real question is, are we buying that anaerobic Colombian coffee for $30 a pound?
I don't know. It was pretty bonkers on that cupping table yesterday.
All right, folks. It's been a long one. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.